Buzz. Reforming America's marijuana prohibition laws takes education, lobbying, and voting. From Washington, D.C. to your state capital to your city hall, marijuana law reform involves all levels of civic life. Learn how you can make your impact with elected officials as we take a look at our government at work.
Welcome back, everyone. 22 and a half after the hour, and today we turn to thehill.com, which is the inside politics blog there in Washington, D.C. And the story today is Pot Politics, the 2016 GOP hopefuls on their past marijuana use. Seems like they can't get out quick enough to talk about their use or non-use of marijuana. Long gone are the Bill Clinton I didn't inhale days. We all know with marijuana legalization on the front burner in California and other states for 2016, we know this will be a major issue in the presidential race. And so these candidates are scrambling to make sure they don't get caught in any sort of hypocrisy trap or any denials of marijuana use when it can be easily proven by their former classmates. The one that made some big news recently was Jeb Bush, one of the smarter of the Bush brothers. He's the former governor of Florida, and he admitted last week that he was a stoner. It says, quote, "I drank alcohol and I smoked marijuana when I was at Andover." That's his prep school. Quote, "It was pretty common," end quote. According to Jeb's buddy, they used to get stoned while listening to Steppenwolf's Magic Carpet Ride. Next is Senator Ted Cruz out of Texas, and his staff spoke up for him on Tuesday that he smoked marijuana when he was a teenager. According to the spokesman, quote, "Teenagers are often known for their lack of judgment, and Senator Cruz was no exception. When he was a teenager, he foolishly experimented with marijuana. It was a mistake, and he's never tried it since," end quote. Rand Paul, the libertarian, the Republican from Kentucky, has refused to explicitly say that he's smoked weed. He won't come right out and say it, but he's taken shots at Jeb Bush for opposing medical marijuana due to, now that he's admitted that he is a marijuana user in his past. Rand Paul said, quote, "Let's just say I wasn't a choir boy when I was in college, and that I can recognize that kids make mistakes. And I can say that I made mistakes when I was a kid," end quote. And of course, his frat buddy from Baylor University said, quote, "Randy smoked pot," end quote. And it's interesting how all of these candidates frame this as a mistake. I made this terrible mistake. I made this mistake. It'll be interesting to see what sort of policies they would support for other kids who end up making the same mistakes. Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, has refused to say whether he has smoked weed. His quote was, "If I tell you that I haven't, you won't believe me. And if I tell you that I did, then kids will look up to me and say, well, I can smoke marijuana because look how he made it. He did all right, so I guess I can do it too." And the bottom line is that it is a substance that alters your mind. Now, when I was 17 and 18 and 16, I made dumb decisions as is. I didn't need the help of marijuana or alcohol to further that, end quote. So again, that's kind of one of them non-statements, right? He didn't need the help of marijuana, but did he have the help of marijuana? It doesn't really quite say there, so we'll see how that pans out. Chris Christie, the jolly governor of New Jersey, he, of course, threatened to veto a decrim bill in New Jersey and asked whether or not he ever used marijuana. He said, quote, "The answer is no," end quote. And Governor Christie, given the data that we have now on obesity and body mass index, that is that marijuana consumers have lower incidences of diabetes and body mass index, maybe you ought to take it up. We've also got Ben Carson, the former neurosurgeon. He hasn't said about his marijuana use one way or the other, but he has warned about legalizing it because it's a gateway drug that causes hedonistic activity. Well, if you're doing it right. There's also Mike Huckabee, the former Southern Baptist minister, former governor of Arkansas, who he doesn't even drink. And he even opposed dancing when he was in divinity school. So it's like you're going to elect John Lithgow from Footloose here. Rick Perry, the former Texas governor and non-Mensa candidate, also has supported relaxing the pot laws, but says that he has never smoked pot. On the Jimmy Kimmel Show, he said, no, thank God. But does secondhand smoke count? Because I think there's still some left here where Snoop Dogg was. End quote. Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, former Senator of New York, former First Lady, says she's never smoked marijuana, even though her husband copped to not inhaling. She said, quote, I didn't do it when I was young. I'm not going to start now, end quote. Of course, Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side, talking some Democrats now. Martin O'Malley, he's the Democratic former Maryland governor. He signed a decrim law, but says, actually hasn't said whether or not he's ever used marijuana himself. And finally, the independent from Vermont, the self-declared socialist, Bernie Sanders, said that he has smoked pot. Quote, my hair was long, but not long for the times. I smoked marijuana, but was never part of the drug culture. That wasn't me, end quote. Telling that to New York Magazine. So there is a look at your potential 2016 presidential candidates, their views on marijuana and whether or not they've used it themselves. Again, we've seen in the past that it really doesn't matter if they have used it themselves, if they choose to be hypocrites and punish other people for the youthful indiscretions they themselves made and got away with.